So I think Alex posed a very interesting question about MOOCs and online learning, about if they are a hype or they are the real thing. I think the answer is that they are here to stay, and that's because you guys are here. So before entering into the debate, let's start with some introductions from yourself. You have 1 minute, okay, to tell us, because I think the question is how MOOCs have evolved since you launched your companies, okay, and where you are right now. So Carolina, you have a great quote that I really like about your company, that is, we aim to remove the barriers of knowledge. So tell us about yourself and Miriadax.
Okay, so first of all, of course, MOOCs are here to stay. I can assure you that. And they're really here to stay because they're good for everybody. They're good for the universities because they're actually opening the borders. As you say, they're giving them the opportunities to reach students that would never have dreamt to actually be able to get to the campus. And really developing new methodologies that allow them to really take advantage of the time when they're actually at the campus with the flipped classroom, etc. They're good also for the corporations, because what we're seeing now is that there's been a whole lot of very interesting conversations about lifelong learning, etc. And what we're seeing is that MOOCs right now are starting to be a tool that the HR directors are using to provide training to their employees at a much cheaper way and with much more actualized content. So it's great. And why it's really, really here to stay is because it's the first time, I mean, I've been in e-learning for 25 years. And with the MOOCs, what we've seen is that we're really democratizing access to anybody in the world. They're having access to the best knowledge of the world from any place in the world, from a village lost in the middle of Peru or somebody that is in Berlin. And that's something absolutely unique. So we really believe in it.
Great. So Simon, let's go with you. Future Learn, CEO of Future Learn, that is very, very based on university content to the world of MOOCs. I have one quote that I commented you before from your Vice Chancellor of Open University, that he said, we might be late to the party, but we want to be the best answer. You launched your platform of MOOCs later, but tell us about how is it working right now.
So yeah, we launched our platform 5 years ago, almost exactly, with 8 courses at that time. And there's no doubt the world in which we entered was full of hype. And those players who had been in the market already for 2 years, mainly American, had unquestionably promoted some of that hype. That MOOCs were a panacea for the educational gaps in the world. That universities would be swept aside by the arrival of these new MOOCs, and only a few would survive. Now that, of course, was nonsense, but so was then the reaction of many in the industry to say, well, this is just a fad, MOOCs will disappear. The answer was always somewhere in the middle, and it was never about MOOCs. It was about the arrival of digitization in higher education. And there, we would have a much more rational debate about the impact that digitization is having, the impact it is going to have. And what has happened for us as a MOOC company is there has been no reduction in the number of universities wanting to join, the number of other partners, employers, governments wanting to work with us. We now have well over 1,000 courses, spreading all areas of professional and academic knowledge. But the key is that universities, where at the beginning they were maybe just doing this for experimentation, now have a much clearer strategic idea of how they are using these courses to recruit new students, to disseminate research, for humanitarian aid, or to open up to new markets and new professional audiences. And what that's enabled us, who have built that relationship with these universities to do, is then become a much stronger partner for them in a whole range of other areas they want to move digital. And so in this session, I'll talk about what we're doing in enabling full degrees to be put on our platform that use MOOCs to enable someone to start learning and then bridge in more flexible and on-demand ways into a wider range of flexible qualifications. So MOOCs are certainly here to stay. We just don't really use the M word so much anymore.
Okay, great. Thank you, Simon. So Carlos, Udacity, I mean, if we talk about MOOCs, Udacity is like kind of the legend of your CEO and co-founder, Sebastian Thorn, right? It all happened in 2012 when he launched this artificial intelligence course online, and he saw that there was a great demand. So where are you now? Because you moved from MOOCs to nano degrees. Tell us a little bit.
Yes, actually, first of all, thank you for the invitation. It's great to be here. That we were founded by Sebastian, and by that time, when he launched the idea of MOOCs as an experiment within Stanford, he was VP of Innovation at Google. He was responsible for Google self-driving cars, Google Street View, Google Glass, a lot of these great innovation projects at Google. He decided to do this experiment. He sent one email, and after 90 days, he had over 160,000 people all over the world joining his experiment. It was a class on artificial intelligence. And what was great was that 40,000 people completed, and what was even more interesting was the fact that the first 400 students, they were not the profile that Sebastian was expecting. So because of that, he decided to leave Google to start Udacity. And we started as a MOOC platform. So partnering with universities to democratize education. And 2012 was the year of the MOOC, as New York Times declared. It was this great hype, as John described. And in 2013, we saw this shock of reality. Of course, that, I mean, MOOCs couldn't solve all the problems that we have in education. And by the end of that year, by the end of 2013, Sebastian wrote this nice article entitled "MOOCs Are a Lousy Product." It was very controversial. Yeah. But one thing that I really admire Sebastian for, he was very humble and he looked at the reality. And what was the reality at that point? The reality was the maximum 5% of people were graduating, were finishing MOOCs. So if you build a product that 95% of people give up, you're not solving anything. And by looking at that reality, we were able to pivot Udacity so that Udacity became a school, an online school, to teach these 21st century skills, to teach you skills for you to advance your career in the digital economy. And we did that by evolving the concept of MOOCs to a nano degree. And what's a nano degree? A nano degree, it's a simple course around, on average, 6 months, or $1,000, especially designed to teach you one specific skill. And what makes a nano degree very unique and makes them to work when compared to the previous MOOCs are basically 3 things. First, they're built in partnership with top technology companies. So Google, Facebook, Amazon, Twitter, IBM, so on and so forth. Those companies who are experiencing the pain of shortage of talent, they tell us what a professional needs to know in order to have a successful career in them. And we then create a course in partnership with them to teach the skills. Second thing, we were able to implement project-based learning at scale. What does that mean? Through a nano degree, our students, they have to build projects, on average 4 to 6 projects. The students, they build a project, send to us, and we've built this large community of professional experts who are gonna evaluate, assess these projects, and provide a detailed feedback to the students within 24 hours. And the student only graduates if they successfully complete all the projects. And the third pillar is a partnership with the industry so that the industry can also hire from within our student pool. So after implementing that, I'm happy to tell you that we are able to increase the graduation rates or the completion rates, if you may, from around 5% to over 30%. There are places like India and China that we have actually graduation rates close to 50%. And we just actually surpassed 50,000 graduated students in our degrees globally, which makes us very happy and very proud. But it's still the beginning. So we'll see how we're going to continue evolving.
But you're here to stay, right?
We're here to stay because we evolve.
Great. Yeah. So, John, we listened to your presentation. It was great, and I think you are doing a great job, like enabling education through technology. But in some of your keynotes, previous ones, doing some research, you said that the biggest issue of education is not going to be technology, it's going to be the culture, right? How teachers, industry, administrations, they see this. So can you elaborate a little bit more?
Sure. If there was a wonderful, I loved Michael Korn's presentation, but if you were there, remember the slide that it said disaggregating staff, and it had the professor being broken into, and that just looks so perfect, but if you did a survey and asked how many professors want to be disaggregated, you would find, no, they don't want to be disaggregated, and they don't want to be unbundled, and they've been taught by, they've been instilled and inspired by a higher education that looks back. And so there's so many cultural challenges, and the one thought I would throw is, I think too often we talk about driving change as if we're going to drive over you, as opposed to taking the time to really try to find points of commonality, and where the passion of teachers who care only about their students can be, you can find a point of agreement where an entry point to technology innovation. If we push technology, that's where we get the resistance that can sometimes be dramatic. If we can find a way to draw people in because it's so compelling, and that's why we're all so excited about technology, that I think is what has to happen in the long term.
Thanks, John. One question, we are talking about different type of content, looking at your platforms, because you have like content created by experts or industry leaders and provided directly to learners, and we have content from the academia, universities, business schools. Miriadax is from Telefónica. You have both models, but also a third one that is creating this online community to teachers. So what are the advantages, disadvantages of one model versus the other? How is the education community seeing this? Simon?
We are primarily getting our content from universities, and that is a deliberate strategic decision. Our belief is that if you really are going to try and live up to any of that early hype, then you have to work with the established players in the industry to try and help them transform themselves. Because the scale and impact of what a whole range of universities with established brands and a vast access to academics and content, what they could do as a network of partnerships as opposed to what any of us could do individually, the scale is massively different. So I sometimes feel, though, that we've taken the harder path because it is hard work. And I couldn't agree more that it is about not technology and not trying to scare people to say, if you don't do this, then your university will die or your course will die out. You have to incentivize, motivate, and excite people about the incredible opportunities they now have to transform their impact on society beyond the narrow group of students that they are used to serving, and into the vast range of professional learners, retired learners around the world, not just within the physical locations they're used to teaching. So it's hard work. It means we have to invest a huge amount in people to support academics, to support project teams, and we need to do a huge amount of training and support to try and get courses that put the learner first. Because often the academics we're working with are used to delivering a certain style of teaching in a certain way in a classroom. And they try to take that and replicate it and put it online. And we have to explain to them it won't work, and we won't let it on our platform. You have to think about the learner on a mobile device, and we won't let anything on our platform if it won't work on this device, who has got up early because they need to take their children to school and it's the only moment they can learn, or who was on the bus on the way home, and you have to learn how to engage them and keep them and create narratives and stories that excite and interest them, because they're not sat in your classroom in front of you. So we sometimes think it's the harder path, but it's enabling us to deliver huge scale in terms of volume of content and volume of audiences that we attract. 8 million people have now signed up to our courses. So it's a route we will continue along, but it's key, we think, that we bring other partners alongside, employers, professional organizations, governments, to promote and add credibility and real employability value to the courses we offer.
That's great. So, Carolina, tell us a little bit about your experience, because you're one of the first providers in Iberoamerican of MOOCs, and you have both models. Academia, you have the scholarly teachers, and expert content. So what's your experience here?
Exactly. I agree 100% with what Simon said about the importance of the academia. When we started, actually 5 years ago, having renowned universities putting their name on a MOOC was very important as far as people being interested in doing the courses, because the knowledge is in the university. It's true that it's been hard sometimes, but when you find a teacher that actually believes in this and develops a course and has the experience of actually having a relationship with 25,000 students instead of 100, he says, wow, I've opened my world also, and the information they can actually access through all the learning analytics of where actually I've gone wrong, this concept hasn't been very well explained, I have to improve. They really are really excited. So we believe in the evangelization of the universities on one side. We want them to move into this digital world and be part of it. On the other side, in Scholartic, we go to teachers. There we're training teachers in coding and new didactics, etc. And there the truth is that what we've gone for is more the experts, people that are really known in neuroscience or in coding, like Quartier that is coming tomorrow, and people that are really have a lot of credibility with the teachers directly, even if there is no academia. And there it's really quite exciting also seeing the finishing level. Here I have a different view from the Latin American market compared with the Anglo-Saxon. Even in the open free MOOCs, the finishing rate is around 26%. So it's very high. There is lots of interest from our region to actually learn, even if it's not a degree with as much tutoring service as can be a specific degree. And anyway, even I've heard so many times about the problem of the MOOCs was the finishing rate. When you have 50,000 people that has finished a course, even if you have 20% that finishes it, it's still an incredible size, an amount of people that are actually learning online. The people that have been working on e-learning for 25 years, we were used to 200 students, not to 25,000 students in one promotion. So we're talking of things that have completely revolutionized what is digital education.
Because at the end it's like open knowledge, right? And I don't know if finishing
exactly,
the MOOC is
it's
the
not
right
the objective. Exactly. Some people just go access to everything and they want to learn a chunk of knowledge specifically. They don't want to finish a 40 hours course. So it's really opening the access to the best knowledge of the world. It's amazing.
That's one of the great shadows about MOOCs, the finishing rate, etc. But let's talk about one of the biggest or major trends that is coming now, that is how MOOCs are embedding into corporate learning. Probably Carlos here. Let's try here in the audience. How many of you has done a MOOC in the last year? That's quite a lot. That's great.
That's
so
good.
How many of you have done a MOOC within your company? I mean, your company provided a MOOC.
How many future learners? Not enough. FutureLearn.com. Please have a look. Best platform in the world.
After Miriadax.
Now this is the beauty
After
contest of
Miriadax. So I'm in Madrid.
But Carlos,
just take a look and
I'm gonna give you the word right now. But I think this is one of the biggest trends, and you are providing like full support to companies like Google, BMW, etc. So do you think this is going to be like a real global trend? And how do you develop content for them? I mean, it's
Yes, that's a great question. First, how do we develop content? So we partner with these companies, and we ask these companies what a professional must know in order to have a successful career at them. So let's say an artificial intelligence engineer at Google, what this person needs to know in order to have a successful career. Then the companies will tell us, look, this professional needs to master these skills, A, B, C, and D. After that, we create with them a curriculum that actually teaches A, B, C, and D through projects. We have, of course, videos, quizzes, etc. But the most important thing, and that's a very important difference when you talk about Udacity and in general other platforms, is that for a student to finish, we really don't care if they watched all videos or none. They really need to finish the projects successfully. And that's actually why the nano degrees work. By the end, our students who came to our platform, they come to our platform for 3 reasons. First, to advance in their current careers. Second, to change careers and start a new career, get a new job in a new career. Or third, to start a business with the skill that they learn. So based on that, we are actually measuring the success on these 3 items, and we are really helping our students to get there. Now, the companies, they partner with us not only to create content, but also to hire students. If you look, for example, artificial intelligence, you know how many artificial intelligence experts exist today in the world? There are estimates which say around 20 to 22,000 artificial intelligence experts. Tencent says there are 200,000 experts, but I don't know, maybe in China. But Gartner said that by 2020, we will need 2.3 million artificial intelligence experts, jobs created by artificial intelligence. Around that number is going to be the jobs that artificial intelligence actually is going to kill. So why the heck aren't all universities teaching or graduating artificial intelligence or experts? We have at Udacity a school of artificial intelligence where we teach artificial intelligence for engineers, self-driving cars, robotics, all the aspects from introductory to advanced. And I believe we are complementary to universities. But universities, they really need to move faster. Otherwise, how are we going to solve this shortage of talent? So,
great.
And that is one of the biggest sort of frustrations, I think, of trying to go through the universities. The universities need to change faster than they're changing. And we are a catalyst. We're really helping to drive that. But in the time it would take them to think about and plan curriculum around artificial intelligence, the whole market would have changed before they got any professor teaching that subject, never mind someone graduating from that subject. So somehow we need to help them operate much, much more dynamically and think very differently about their qualifications than they are doing at the moment. And I think Udacity are doing brilliant work, actually, in showing the way.
No, yes, absolutely. But just to defend a little bit our universities, sometimes they're wanting to do new curriculums, and they have to suffer the public administration limitation and the speed in order to provide new degrees, etc. So there are a few universities that are really willing to promote all these type of things, and they're struggling with the day-to-day of passing them through the official system, let's say.
I think this is one of the great challenges, right? Like how all the actors in the industry combine. So John, let us know how technology can help universities, for example, to go faster. I know you are working with educos, with different institutions, etc., to help them thrive through technology. So what are the main challenges?
You know, one of the things we've talked a lot about in a traditional college context is the suite of technologies being developed to help with student success. So sometimes called IPASS, integrated planning and advising for student success, that those tools that will allow, I mean, traditional higher education has a completion problem too. It's not just MOOCs. And so, and I think for those institutions where they don't have a completion crisis, they still are going to be expected to improve and enhance the student experience. And I think these tools, technologies that help students to make sure they're on track, to help them connect with other students in meaningful ways, to help them connect to the services that colleges and universities offer to help them succeed. That's a whole suite of tools. I think blockchain, although if we talk about hype, blockchain is always an example. But when I think of the true potential of blockchain, both to reimagine credentialing, I mean, it fits in very nicely with what MOOCs are doing, but is also a technology that will benefit both traditional and other higher education groups. And I think the potential for blockchain to also preserve credentials for areas around the world where there's strife. You may hear later that I was talking with a colleague about Syria, where the school they went to was destroyed. So how can they prove that they attended for a year if there's no blockchain? It presents a way to save your credentials. And as you start to explore different ways to even define what education is, blockchain will be there, I hope, I think, who knows.
For certification, it's going to be very interesting.
Just agree with, just a story as well. I met some people in Dubai, Syrian refugees. And I was talking to them about our model, and we offer everyone who finishes our courses, and we have higher completion rates. 20% of people who start our courses finish them, and we offer a printed certificate as well as a digital certificate. And I said, we're always looking at this, it's a cost, do people want them? And they said to me, you must continue to provide the printed certificate. And they said that when they escaped from Syria, they had very little they could take. They absolutely took their printed educational certificates. Now clearly, we need to move beyond a world where you need a physical piece of paper. But we cannot underestimate the importance of these credentials.
I think credentials are great, but whose fault is that? Is the students or is the companies that are recruiting people? I mean, how valid is for a company if, I don't know, someone comes to the company, applies for a job, and he says, I have 6 MOOCs. So what's the value, and Carolina, you have some experience here too, that the company actually gives to someone that is coming with a curriculum with MOOCs?
Yeah, well, when I'm talking to the HR directors, the feeling that I have, we've been talking a lot all these days about learnability. Clearly, somebody that has a degree from a nice university, but that can prove that he's evolved and that he's continued learning through a whole lot of different access of platforms, etc., is something that more and more the HR responsibles are looking at very seriously, because they say, even if he's the best engineer, telecom engineer in the world, in 3 years' time, he will need to reinvent himself. And this is, at least he has that ability and that mentality that he is going to be responsible of his learning process. And that's something that is more and more important for the HR directors, I feel.
Okay, and talking about HR, I think you, from Udacity, you host an event a couple of weeks ago that I thought, when I saw that, they were like linking their students with companies and recruiters. So the question is, are you going to be the new LinkedIn or?
No. I'd say this. Really, when we think about students first, and I love what you said, really putting the student at the center, education is a means to an end. It's a means for students to achieve their career goals. This is how we see it. So based on that, we design our programs so that our students achieve their career goals. Now, building on the credentialing part, I think the credential is very important, but more and more I see the value of the project-based learning or learning by doing. Take, for example, the #1 hottest career there, which is data science. It's paying average 300 to 500,000 US a year for a data scientist. Shortage of talent, so companies are paying big bucks to hire talent in that area. Now, the talent shortage is so large that companies like Google, Facebook, all these top tech companies, they are not requiring people to have actually academic credentials anymore as a minimum. And what we are seeing these companies doing in the selection process, they apply real-world problems for them to solve during the selection process. And one thing that we are seeing over and over, our students playing back to us, is that through the experience of the nanodegree, through the experience of solving projects in the course, and getting real feedback from industry experts, which is the experience that they have, actually, we are getting them ready to the selection process they are gonna find in all these top technology companies. So I think that has a huge value. And we have seen over and over and over and over how our students, yes, there is a value on the credential, on the nanodegree credential, but most importantly, there is a value on learning how to really get their hands dirty, how to solve real-world problems.
Okay, great. Let me just read a couple of sentences that were mentioned on this stage during these days, okay? The first one is, online education is the most powerful tool, so no one is left behind in this digital world. Another one, online learning is the most disruptive invention since Gutenberg's printer. So, do you feel the pressure? I mean, there is a clear, huge social impact, and that's something that Carolina was telling me before, that at the end, we are a business, but being a sustainable business can help us to do great things, for example, with Profuturo in Africa. So do you have this kind of pressure about the social responsibility? Carolina?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, Telefónica considers digital education clearly as a social impact project. So I'm very lucky. I'm able to do projects such as Miriadax and Scholartic, being able to give for free access to incredible knowledge to anybody who speaks Spanish or Portuguese. So that's incredible. Then I have to do business on the other side to make sure that I can continue to do this business. But it's clearly that these projects will need to be sustainable at some point. But the truth is that the cost of learning, we've been seeing before that, for example, a course of HTML5 was something that would provide future to people. We've did the calculation at this point with the number of courses we've done through Miriadax, an hour of learning of HTML5 is 0.000001 cent. So really, digital education is something that is giving opportunities in a way that we couldn't even dream of very few years. And when we're talking of artificial intelligence, the startup that actually won yesterday, Sense, who is enabling MOOCs actually to have open assessments and really provide different models and different patterns to make it easy and really give good feedback, that is going to make us life even easier. Because when you have 100,000 students, it's clear that it's impossible to have teachers behind it. But if artificial intelligence really is able to help us in that and give good feedback to the students, we're really at the beginning. I mean, as you say, the pushing is hard, but it's going to be quite incredible what we're going to see in 5 years' time.
Great. Simon, you were going to say something.
So we are a for-profit company. We're owned by a not-for-profit, the British Open University, but we have always been for-profit since day one. However, what unifies every single one of the people who work for me and myself is a desire to transform access to education for people all over the world. What I try to avoid in my company is having social impact projects and commercial projects. What we have to do is combine the two, and I passionately believe that you can. So our model is to break open the barriers to education, to get thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of people around the world much greater access to education, much more flexible ways of learning, which brings many more people into the ability to learn, much more affordable because we're bringing scale to the challenge. And by doing so, we will generate very significant revenues for our partners and for our shareholder. So I firmly believe that you can combine both. What I have to sometimes explain to my team, however, is that you can't just focus on pure social impact because someone has to pay. What we try to do is combine all of them. And I see day in, day out stories that come back from medical centers in Bangladesh or in East Africa, where people are using our courses on the ground to train people who would never have had access to these resources before. I hear stories of people who felt that their chance of ever studying at university was gone, and suddenly they have access to this wealth of education. And all of that, I believe, is an unbelievable commercial opportunity, as well as an ability to really deliver global impact and start to return on some of that early hype that there was around MOOCs.
Okay, so sorry, we're running out of time, so just to wrap up,
Great.
I'm going to ask you one question, okay? So starting with John, it's going to be the same question for all of you to see how do you answer this. In a single tweet, how do you see online education 5 years from now?
Asking an American to tweet is very difficult these days.
It's tricky.
But I'll try. Predicting the future, read the Horizon Report.
Okay, great. Carlos?
I believe the future of education will be centered on the student, will be our students will learn by doing real-world projects. Are you counting the characters?
You're over. Yeah.
Yeah. It will be collaborative.
That's great.
So
That's interesting.
education technology companies will partner with traditional education institutions for the sake of the student.
Thank you. Simon?
The amount and quality of education that I will be able to access from this device anywhere in the world will be transformed from where we are now, from where we were 10 years ago, and yet even in 5 years' time, we'll still just be getting started.
Thanks. Carolina?
Adaptive learning, enhanced with artificial intelligence at a very, very accessible cost, reducing barriers.
Great. Thank you very much, all of you. Hope to see you next year here. Thanks for your words, and big applause for our panelists. Thank you very much.